Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative. I'm a longtime journalist. I've produced stories for ABC News, CBS News, and CNN in New York City. I love meeting interesting people, and that is exactly what led me to meet our wonderful co-host, David Parker, who's joining us from San Francisco. David is the author of 3 books, Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476, his latest book. And David has a classic and a very inspiring San Francisco story. So David, welcome, and let's get right into it. Were you born there in San Francisco?
Yes, I was born, raised, and I died in San Francisco.
Oh, no. That's not for many more years ahead, but
Okay.
you are a native San Franciscan, that's for sure. So anyway, no, it's a great story. And in your first book, Income and Wealth, you've done many interviews in connection with that book. And what seems to interest so many journalists, radio hosts, and so on, is your story about wealth creation and establishing financial freedom. And I know there are a couple of stories from your early years that kind of opened your eyes to that whole idea that it's really possible to become financially free. Can you sort of share that with our audience?
Yeah, I think from early age, I began thinking about wealth. I don't know why. Maybe I owed my parents for raising me so well. I'm going to pay them back. I had that thought somehow. I was an expensive child. So I noticed things very young. When I was 12, I'm sitting at the breakfast room table with my parents and I'm reading the paper. I'm not sure I understood that much, but I was reading the paper and there was a story of a waiter at the St. Francis Hotel. He died. They fished through his mattress in his little room. Maybe he lived at the St. Francis Hotel. I'm not sure. Maybe not. And they found stock coupons. He was worth maybe today $10-20 million in today's dollar. And I was shocked. And I thought to myself, how is that possible? He's a waiter, and he was a waiter until he died. That's what he wanted to do. Because now I realize he could afford to do it because he was financially independent. And that's the theme, one of the main themes of my first book, Income and Wealth, kind of an Andrew Carnegie part of it. It's not about how much assets you own, it's about how much income you have coming in. Are you financially independent? You don't care if the economy is going up or down. You don't care if you're working or not. And that man didn't care if he was working, and he worked his whole life. He was happy. That's my youngest experience, realizing there's no relation between income and wealth.
Yeah.
No relation.
And I've for many years now, I've thought that one of our sort of, I don't know if it's proper English, one of our most underappreciated professions in this country is that of teacher, especially teacher in the public schools, and the wages that go along with that important profession, shaping young minds and firing them up for great futures and so on, is still very low. But even with this excitement about what's possible in terms of wealth creation, you were drawn to the teaching profession, right?
Right. The professions are only a few professions, really. Teaching is one, military is one, law and medicine are acting as a profession, sports are a profession. What it means, a profession is any career where that as you mature, you bring all your life experiences to the work and you're always doing better. There's no end to how well you can do. I'm a teacher. I remember there were some first grade teachers in every school because first grade is a very interesting grade. It's maybe the most important grade. And they were the best teachers teaching first grade. And they had been teaching first grade for 40 years. It never occurred to them to teach the second grade or to even change or to change careers. And every year, as a teacher myself, I made it a point. Every year I taught better. I taught faster and more. And that's That's the excitement of a profession. And all the professions. Clergy is a profession. They don't pay well. They don't pay well because everybody would like to do that as opposed to go to work and sit in the cubicle and be Gilbert all day long. So a profession is really something else. And so making wealth is something else. They're unconnected. My wealth.
How did that come about for you? I mean, again, you entered the teaching profession. You were there for 40 years or more than 40 years, as I recall. And you might mention some of the neighborhoods where you taught. I mean, from what you've told me, it was really a, melting pot experience. I spent a lot of time in New York City. So I think again of that, the melting pot of New York City, but San Francisco is as well, of course. And, I just find that so interesting. You want to get into that a little bit, and then maybe after our next break we can continue. But go ahead right now. Yeah.
I only taught inner city public schools. My kids went to the public schools. I went to the public schools. My kids went to better public schools than the inner city public schools, but they weren't that much better because the inner city public schools are not that bad. It's the students who are not doing well, but not the teachers, not the actual layout, not the plants, not the school. And I just enjoyed that environment. I enjoyed the multicultural environment. I'm a professional jazz musician. I'm living in that environment, and I grew up in a multicultural environment, so I'm very comfortable. I come home from school, people ask me, but what's the ethnic or racial background of your students? I didn't look. I have no idea. I'm colorblind in that sense. I just have been in that world so long and I love it. But I stopped teaching full time because I couldn't afford to teach. And so I began to think about real estate a little bit. And then that's when I realized my first deals were in a down time, and the economy crashed in 1974 was the oil embargo, and everything came to a halt. Interest rates flew up, and there was no money around, and real estate came to a grinding halt. And I made an offer for one of my clients to somebody that says, just give the seller a note, tell them you'll pay him later.
And I tell you what, David, that's a beautiful cliffhanger, as they call it in show business. So this is a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin. We're talking with author David Parker, and we will continue. This is a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, co-host, and my brilliant co-host is author David Parker, who is based right there in San Francisco. And we've been talking about that. I love these great stories, David, of how you were first inspired by the idea of financial freedom. You've done very, very well over the years, I must say. I'm impressed and respect that. And you were able to maintain a teaching role in public schools there in San Francisco for 40 years, which is, you've influenced so many young lives. Do you have any of those students from years ago come up to you there in San Francisco?
Well, they do. Not only did I work in a multicultural environment in the inner city schools, I live in a not quite sketchy neighborhood anymore, but I live in a real urban environment. I live in the Mission, more or less. And I walk down the street. I'm going to the fish market on Mission Street, and students come up to me all the time. Mr. Parker, remember me? Remember me? Oh, sure.
They're probably taller now.
Yeah. Well, no one's taller than me. I'm pretty tall.
They're taller than they were in second grade, though.
It's so I was playing tennis in a schoolyard, and they were going to close up the gate. And the guy says, "Are you Mr. Parker? You can stay. I'm going to leave that gate over there open. When you're done, lock it up when you leave." that was out of nowhere. That was nice. That kind of stuff happens all the time.
That's great.
And their parents that come for parent-teacher conferences, and the parents start asking me questions because they realize I had a few answers. And I says, "We're not here for you, but I'll answer the question and do this and this and this and stop doing that and that and that." And then the parents and the kids and the grandchildren come up to me. We remember what you said, Mr. Parker, and we did that. And it improved our lives. You gave us some very good advice.
Wow.
That's a kind of a reward.
Yeah, no, that's ultimate.
I was saying professions are not well paid, and I meant also athletes. Athletes are paid well now in certain sports that have big television and radio coverage. But that wasn't the history of the sport.
Yeah.
In the mid-50s, the athletes, professional baseball players, were traveling on Greyhound bus, city to city, staying in Motel 6 or something like that. And that was a professional athlete, and they would have played for free. Anybody in a profession will do that job for free. If you prepare to play Hamlet your whole life, and someone offered you a job and says, "You pay us $1,000 and we'll let you play Hamlet. Here's my $1,000. Don't pay me. I'll pay you."
Yeah. So and you had that kind of passion for the teaching profession, right?
I had that passion for teaching.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love it. You were starting to tell us how, again, even as you were getting started, in your early 20s, I would assume, in the teaching profession, a light bulb went on, so to speak, and you began investing in property, and even on a limited teacher's salary. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And also, I also have to throw in, I love the story, you shared with me about one of your uncles, kind of like illustrating the idea that anything's possible. If you have an idea, you can pursue it, and anything's possible. Come up with a creative way to make it happen. But someone encouraged you to start investing in property.
Well, I realized it's in my blood. I became successful right away. I mean, I'm one of the biggest, landlords in San Francisco. 1 hour a day. I never worked more than an hour a day. It's in my blood. But I couldn't teach full time and think about real estate. And in 1974, oil embargo, I told a client of mine who's trying to buy his first house, "Here, offer him a piece of paper, a note. I'll pay you 5 years from now." And the seller says, "Fine, I'll take it. But I can't. I've been trying to sell this for 6 months and I can't sell it. I'll take it." And the buyer, "Oh, I don't know. I'm afraid to do this." "What? I'll do it." So I gave the seller a note, and he says, "Okay, I'll take my note, but I want you to take me out to dinner afterward." Okay. So I said, "That's how you do it. It's called a leveraged buyout. That's what all the big guys do. Professional investment is 100% finance. I don't care how big the deal is. You may put some cash in, but you know exactly how you're getting that cash out, like really quickly or within a short period of time." That's professional investment. You have to think about it, and you start making offers and doing it, and they don't all go through, and "Oh, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, that worked." And I built up a repertoire, or not a repertoire, but a list of ways to do it. And I became a professional investor. No relation to my teaching salary. Low to begin with, and now I'm working half-time.
Yeah, no, amazing. And it's funny, you use the word repertoire, and I think that's actually a great word to use, because as you mentioned, and again, some folks are just getting to know you and enjoy your great stories, but you have been a musician for many, many years, first classically and currently leading a jazz band, the Dave Parker Sextet right there in San Francisco, still performing live a couple times a month. So be sure to catch them. I did recently, and they're great. The band is great. And so you mentioned the word repertoire, and uh, it in some of the real estate deals that you were talking about, I detect some of those qualities of a great musician: instinct, improvisation, stuff like that. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Almost like gamblers, professional gamblers know when to fold and or get off the table. It's not happening. And when it is happening, they know to stay and to bet big when they really feel it. And so I've made deals where I just knew this was fine without having to. If I analyzed it too much, I would have walked away from it myself, like the first customer I had. So that takes practice, and that's what you have. Yeah, you're right on it. And I teach that way, and I play music that way. I told the guys in the band we're playing. You played that solo last week. Don't play that stuff again. Don't play the same licks. Constantly be evolving.
Yeah.
And
if somebody drops a plate of dishes in the tray of dishes in the kitchen, what do you do?
well, I told you that story once. So somebody dropped all the dishes, and I pointed to the drummer, cymbals. And I pointed to the trumpet player, go. And I pointed to each one of them, everybody's in, and we just took it from there. And when I taught school, it may take me 30, 40 days sometimes. I would wait for a student to say something, like drop some dishes or do something that the whole class latched onto, and I would make that the center of the class. And I would that idea, and then I would have them. I'd have them in the palm of my hand for the whole year because
I love it.
everything was about them.
I want to talk more about your work with your students in a moment. This is a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin. We're with author David Parker. David's website, by the way, is davidparkeressays.com. You can catch us on KSFO. This is a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, your co-host, longtime journalist, ABC News, CBS News, and other news organizations. And as you can tell, I love meeting interesting people, and that certainly is a great description for my co-host, author David Parker. He's based right here in San Francisco. David is the author of Income and Wealth, a San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. A few minutes ago, we were talking about an inspiring story that you came across in the newspaper there, a waiter who'd amassed a great fortune. I'd love to hear about some other stories that sort of inspired you, give you that idea that income and wealth are not the same thing.
Well, that's 12 years old. The next, there's 3 in a row. The second one was I was 14 or even 16, and my grandmother was telling me that they were refugees from Austria, World War II, right out of the film Sound of Music. They ran into the Swiss Alps and they got to France. Let's get out of here. They went to New York. That's not far enough. Let's go to San Francisco. Let's get as far away as we can. And my grandfather's pacing up and down the house, and my grandmother couldn't take it anymore. Go out, would you do something, get a job, do something. He goes out, he comes back at the end of the day. I bought 4 movie theaters. Where did he get the
Wow.
money? He bought 4 movie theaters, and that really threw me for a loop. And so I finally figured it out that he didn't. If he didn't have the money, he got the money. That there it is. He got investors. You put the money up, and I'll give you half the deal. I'll take half the deal for putting it together. Ah, that's so you can be a school teacher. You have an idea. You get some other school teachers. I told plenty of school teachers to go buy their home, and I helped them. And years later, they said, "Man, buying little homes for $35,000, $40,000 in 1970s, you made my fortune."
Yeah.
Years later, they told me.
Yeah.
And
That's amazing. I love to. I think people might enjoy hearing again, kind of related to those stories of where you were first inspired by that idea that income does not equal wealth. When a number of news organizations have interviewed you, in connection with your first book, Income and Wealth, they have one favorite chapter, and that to me really illustrates what's possible. I mean, that's certainly inspired me personally, I have to say. Can you talk about that a little bit?
well, there's one chapter. It's called McDonald's, and I give an example how a minimum wage employee can become financially independent in 10 years. At that wage, if you're earning much more, same program, and you'll be financially independent in 10 years at a higher salary. And essentially, you save half your income, your gross income, and you make a leveraged investment on an income producing asset, a house. In San Francisco, it's very expensive. Buy half a house. Maybe get your spouse or a childhood friend, somebody and buy a third of a house, whatever it is. It doesn't make any difference. You buy it at your price range. Every year you buy an income producing asset. And at the end of 10 years, besides having tax write offs, besides having the loans paying down, and besides having income slowly rising, you look at I did almost on an Excel spreadsheet. You look at it, wow, I don't have to work anymore. I'm financially independent in any range. And I show it with a minimum wage worker.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's amazing. It's really, really inspiring. It reminds us all that anything is possible if you set your goal and take the right action to make it happen. Like you're telling us how you have those conversations with the bankers and so on. So no, that's very, very inspiring.
Example,
Yeah,
better add with the example of any example, but the minimum wage especially. That's
yeah,
not that high. In San Francisco, it's $15 an hour, but the cost of living is higher, so it's not any better than anybody else. You have to find ways to cut your expenses, and that is just as much the discipline as anything else. Like live around the corner from where you work,
yeah.
and don't commute 2 hours a day. Work 2 hours a day every day at time and a half.
Yeah, yeah,
There's tons of ways to get your expenses down.
yeah, yeah. Well, in this part of our conversation, we just have a couple of minutes, but I this reminds me that we've been talking about your personal story and where you found inspiration and some of the amazing achievements you have in your own life. But this reminds me that in your 3 books, each a great book of collected essays, you really focus on history to a large degree. And what in terms of even a minimum wage worker who can become financially free in 10 years, that's a great accomplishment of, really tapping into possibility. And it reminds me a little bit, that that's kind of what our founding forefathers did. That's what they did in ancient Greece. Some of your stories. Can you talk a little bit about that whole idea of, um, you know, being inspired by an idea and then taking action?
Well, 5th century Athens is one of the great centuries of all time. Everything you see around you, the bridge behind you, poetry, philosophy, architecture, mathematics, You study geometry in school, you're reading Euclid. Almost everything around you, they pretty much invented. That's one of the greatest moments that God came down and touched mankind. But Greece prospered so well because somebody had the brains to ask Solon, who was a philosopher and a merchant, kind of like me in that sense, what should we do? And he says, one of the great economic theories of our day, they didn't know the words, but Solon understood the notion of comparative advantage. He says, Greece, stop farming. The land here is miserable. You're wasting your time. Plant olive trees, make olive oil, put that olive oil in vases, paint the vases with your great artists, and ship those vases in your great shipping around the Mediterranean, and you'll be rich. And that's what happened. Athens became overwhelmingly rich. Everybody was moving to Athens, but smart people were moving to Athens. It had an enormously brilliant citizenry.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I just want to share with everyone. David's books are filled with stories like that, drawn on history, and great examples. So, this is a San Francisco Conservative, Tom Martin and David Parker. This is Tom Martin. Be sure to check out davidparkeressays.com. There's news and information about David's books. You can download a free chapter and much more. And David will answer your questions. Keep in touch with a San Francisco Conservative, helping to point America to what the founding fathers wanted for this great country. That's davidparkeressays.com. davidparkeressays.com. And be sure to tune in to our next episode of A San Francisco Conservative.